Go to another Witmer's Critique series. As like I mentioned at the beginning of this podcast, this past weekend was the series finale of Curb Your Enthusiasm, and because of that, I'm going to be doing not only the finale but the last season of Curb and my overall kind of thoughts and how I felt the season was as a whole, and how I felt the finale was. Um, so just like let's just kind of get done on that. But overall, because as this last season has gone, for a quick kind of synopsis of what this last season was for Larry and everything, was during a trip down to Georgia. He was in hot water because he had given Leon's mom a bottle of water while she was voting in the hot sun and the Georgia and everything. So unfortunately, and that time, sort of like the Seinfeld finale, it was a law that they couldn't do that he couldn't provide her any water in that time. So pretty much for the whole overarching story for the season is Larry dealing with the aftermath of giving her the water and the legality of it, and almost becoming this cult icon of this law and how it was so unfair and everything and it needed to be changed. He had so much support around, and that's pretty much what most of the season was. For the most part, the overarching season was. Obviously, each individual episode was its own thing, its own kind of Curb Your Enthusiasm, Larry getting himself into hot water or doing something that annoyed somebody or something. Which, if you are a Curb Your Enthusiasm fan, you've known this from past seasons and past episodes of Curb. But overall, what I thought of the season, I thought it was alright. Definitely had its laughs here and there. Definitely had its typical Curb Enthusiasm moments of Larry kind of questioning people, or Larry kind of being an asshole kind of thing, and everything, kind of being a jerk and being selfish or whatever. But overall, I thought it was good. I thought the overarching story of everything that happened was interesting. And the one thing that happened throughout the season, which I do admire because I am a huge Seinfeld fan, is the amount of nods and everything that they took from Seinfeld. There were a couple episodes where they had similar points that Seinfeld had. I know if you're watching this, you may have, there may be some people who say Curb is not really a continuation, but almost like a continuation of Seinfeld, but just a little more cursing. Pretty much like if George had kind of continued just as Larry David instead, because that's pretty much who George is based off of, is Larry and everything. So I know there's moments in the past season where they've had moments here and there where they had some Seinfeld vibes, but for sure in this season there were a couple here and there. Example, one of the big things, and this was a continuation off of the previous season of Curb, where Larry's in this relationship that he desperately kind of wants to get out of, because the whole reason why he got into it was because of another obscure law where he needed to have a fence and everything, and how in the last season he was being kind of blackmailed and everything to with his show Little Larry and everything. And one of the big things, obviously, and this is kind of why I mentioned Seinfeld, is it's very reminiscent of George in season 7 trying to get out of his engagement and his marriage to Susan, or marrying Susan, and how that played out in the whole season 7. And that's pretty much what the first half of this last season is Larry trying to get out of it, because at the finale of the season finale of the season before is that she had she was an AA, she was an alcoholic and everything, and one of the things Larry did was take shoes that once belonged to a relative of hers that was in the Holocaust and everything, and Larry had put on his shoes and everything, and she had noticed it, and she went on a huge kind of fall off from that. And one of the things is Larry heard from her sponsor is that he needs to stay with her for another 6 months or so, just because she needed that stability and everything to kind of get past the trauma and everything that she had gone through in the past, or had just gone through and everything, to get back onto her sobriety. So once that happens, everything, that's a big thing. And like I mentioned in the finale and this whole overarching season, another Seinfeld nod is obviously this obscure law is very reminiscent of the season finale, or the series finale of Seinfeld, where it was the Good Samaritan law, where they didn't intervene when the guy gets robbed and everything. Again, there were subtle nods here and there that made you think and very much gave you Seinfeld vibes. And by the time it got to the series finale, you pretty much knew that it was not really going to be a carbon copy, but it was going to be very similar to how Seinfeld ended in the finale. I know that's very a polarizing finale, but in this one, it's a similar thing where every time Larry is in this courtroom and everything, there's a little more story in between, where in Seinfeld it's character after character after character comes in and says how pretty much how all these people had a run-in with everyone on Seinfeld. Whereas this, it's moments that makes Larry, because everything is pretty much known that he broke this law, and he's trying to say he broke it, but the law needs to be changed and everything. But the prosecution and everything was saying that this is, again, similar to the Seinfeld finale, that this is an overarching thing, that Larry has had these moments over and over again. That's where you see so many people, characters from past seasons and past highlights of episodes, in which you have moments where Larry had his moments and everyone had everything. One of them obviously being Book of Joe, where he had that spiteful coffee company. He was one of the people who came in, like I just mentioned, his recent ex-girlfriend that he just had came in and told the story about how he took the shoes and everything. Then there were other people from highlights from the series that kept coming in and everything. And similarly to that, and one thing that I very much enjoyed was, especially in the series finale, was that Jerry Seinfeld even made an appearance in the last episode, which I enjoyed. And the whole time, one of the things I enjoyed very much was Leon saying how he was just finally watching Seinfeld for the first time and everything. The whole time he's talking about Jerry and how every week he's got a new girlfriend and everything. And how it's a very similar, even near the end of the episode, of how Seinfeld ended, where the last thing that's said is pretty much the first line from when the series started. Very similar thing with how this was going to end, but then there was a little loophole and the trial got thrown out because one of the jurors was out and about, and they were allowed to do that because they were sequestered and everything. And because of that, Larry was able to go free. And they even mentioned at the end that this should have been how they kind of wrapped up Seinfeld, instead of it being the same thing, because it would have been the same punishment for Larry as what Jerry, Elaine, George, Kramer got, where it's 1 year in prison, and everything. But again, I enjoyed it very much. Overall, was it the best? No. Overall, if I'm giving the whole series, this season, a rating out of 100, my rating scales is usually Rotten Tomatoes kind of 0 to 100 kind of thing. But I would give it, the whole overarching season, probably like a 79 kind of thing. That's probably where I'd put it at. If I have to, but on the season, this actual finale episode, I'd probably give it like a 85, 87. Definitely had its funny moments. I enjoyed the little nods to Seinfeld and even making jokes in the episode of how people don't like how the finale ended for Seinfeld and everything, and seeing all these characters from the past throughout Curb make their appearances here and there. One thing I would have liked to see more of was maybe more of those characters, and the way the season felt, I thought there was going to be more characters from this recent season make an appearance and make a case against Larry, and I thought that's kind of how the season was going to go. It just wasn't. And there was obviously some little more cheesy moments that I'm used to in Curb here and there that I wasn't the biggest a fan of. But overall, it was good. Definitely had its funny moments. Definitely normal Curb, Larry funny moments here and there, awkward moments, sometimes uncomfortable moments. But that is Curb and everything. So